Hello, and congratulations on starting a new academic journey at the University of South Carolina. We are excited to welcome you to our wonderful community. My name is Lauren Smith, and I'm the Director of International Student Services. I'll be guiding you through today's presentation focused entirely on maintaining your immigration status. Knowing the duties and responsibilities of your immigration status is essential to your success in the United States. So it is very important that you understand this information. Please make sure to watch the following presentation carefully and with your full attention. This is a mandatory part of the orientation, citizenship verification, and check-in process for new international students at the university. Moreover, you will save yourself a lot of headache if you fully understand what you need to do so that you can thrive as an international student in the US. The intended outcomes of this session are as follows. Number one, understand your role in maintaining your immigration status so that you can be successful at the University of South Carolina. Number two, understand International Student Services' role in supporting your and the institution's immigration compliance. And third, gain a basic understanding of US immigration law and how it relates to your student visa status. First, let's discuss immigration agencies and terms that you need to be aware of. Feel free to refer back to these slides throughout the presentation if you have questions about what something means. This slide demonstrates the various federal agencies that govern immigration law in the US. The US Department of Homeland Security and the US Department of State are the two overarching agencies that you should be familiar with. Within the Department of State, Consular Affairs determines your eligibility for a visa. Bridge USA administers the J-1 Exchange Visitor Visa Program. Within the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, determines your eligibility to enter the US. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE, administers the Student and Exchange Visitor Program and monitors international student compliance. USCIS, also known as US Citizenship and Immigration Services, determines lawful immigration benefits such as employment authorization and change of status. There are 7 general terms for all students to know, and a few more terms that are F1 and J1 specific. Term number 1, the Student and Exchange Visitor Program facilitates information sharing between universities and the federal government. Also known as SCVP, this agency is an arm of ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Term number 2, SEVIS, which stands for Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, is a web-based system that maintains information on F1 and J1 non-immigrant students in the US. International Student Services will use this system to report your address, enrollment, and employment information to SCVP during your time in the US. Term number 3, the SEVIS fee, or I-901 fee, is a required fee that you paid prior to obtaining the F1 or J1 visa. It is a one-time fee unless your SEVIS ID changes. Term number 4, your SEVIS ID can be found on your I-20 or DS 2019 Certificate of Eligibility. This number will always start with the letter N and will remain the same throughout your entire degree unless you do not maintain your status. Term number 5, your I-94 is an essential document that confirms the type of status and for how long you were admitted to the US. International Student Services will need a copy of this I-94 upon your arrival to the US in order to verify that you can enroll in classes at the university. You should always check your I-94 online every time you enter the US to make sure that you were admitted in the proper status. Term number 6, all F1 and J1 student visa holders hold a non-immigrant visa. This means You are authorized to enter the US on a temporary basis for the purpose of obtaining a degree. Your visa status in the US is tied to your ability to enroll full-time at the university because of this. Term number 7, maintaining status is what you must do while present in the US on an F1 or J1 visa to keep your immigration status in good standing. This presentation explains all of the things you need to do in order to maintain your status. Now we will move on to specific terms to know for F1 visa holders. Your F1 visa is a page in your passport. You receive this visa after a successful interview at a US consulate. This F1 visa is entirely for the purpose of crossing the US border. You cannot obtain a new visa within the US. The actual visa stamp is only given at a US consulate outside the US. If you change your status from something other than F1 to F1 during your time here, you will not have this visa in your passport, even though you will still be in F1 status. You do need a valid F1 visa and a valid I-20 certificate of eligibility to request entry to the US. If your F1 visa expires while inside the US, it is not a problem for the actual maintenance of your status. Your I-20 certificate of eligibility is the document issued to you by International Student Services. You may have received it by email or mail after your admission and financial certification processes are complete. Your I-20 must remain valid and accurate during your time in the US. Your I-20 cannot expire prior to your program completion date, or you will no longer be maintaining status. Your I-20 should reflect your accurate academic program information and any off-campus work authorization approval. You will need to get your I-20 signed before traveling internationally so that you can re-enter if your most recent travel signature will be older than 12 months. More on that later. And finally, designated school official. You will likely hear this term at some point during your time as an F1 student. A designated school official, or DSO, is someone who has been authorized by the federal government to report information to SEVIS and to assist international students with the maintenance of their immigration status. Most people who work at ISS are DSOs and are here to assist our F1 students. Next, we will move on to specific terms to know for J1 visa holders. Your J1 visa is a visa stamp in your passport. You receive this visa after a successful interview at a US consulate. This J1 visa is entirely for the purpose of crossing the US border. You cannot obtain a new visa within the US. The actual visa stamp is only given at a US consulate outside the US. You will need a valid J1 visa and a valid DS 2019 certificate of eligibility to request entry to the US. If your J1 visa expires while inside the US, it is not a problem for the actual maintenance of your status. Note that your J1 visa might have a 212E 2-year home residency requirement listed on it. This is determined by the Department of State at the time of your visa interview, so you may or may not be subject to this requirement. Your DS 2019 certificate of eligibility is the document issued to you by International Student Services or your program sponsor if it is not the University of South Carolina. You received your DS 2019 by mail after your admission and financial certification processes were complete. Your DS 2019 must remain valid and accurate during your time in the US. Your DS 2019 cannot expire prior to your program completion, or you will no longer be maintaining status. Your DS 2019 should reflect your accurate academic program information and any off-campus work authorization approval. You will need to get your DS 2019 signed before traveling internationally so that you can re-enter if your most recent travel signature will be older than 12 months at the time of re-entry. More to come on that later. And finally, responsible officer. You will likely hear this term at some point during your time as a J1 student. A responsible officer or alternate responsible officer, otherwise known as RO and ARO, is someone who has been authorized by the federal government to report information to SEVIS and to assist international students with the maintenance of their immigration status. Several people at ISS are alternate responsible officers and are here to assist our J1 students. We have now covered the important terms and agencies that you should know. Next, let's talk about specific times that you need to be in touch with ISS so that your immigration record can be updated. You need to contact ISS if the following occurs: your major or degree program changes, you plan to travel internationally and will need a new travel signature because your most recent signature will be older than 12 months at the time of re-entry. You are interested in pursuing an off-campus work opportunity after one academic year of full-time enrollment. J1 students also need an authorization letter to work on campus, but F1 students do not need this. ISS will reach out to J1 students separately if you receive an on-campus job. Also, if your visa status changes from F1 or J1 to something else, please let us know. You should also contact us if your dependents, your F2 or J2 dependents, if their status changes. And then finally, contact us if you are planning to take a leave of absence, return to your home country, or if you are studying abroad. Maintaining your address and keeping it up to date with International Student Services is an essential part of maintaining your status. Make sure that your Self-Service Carolina account, also known as my.sc.edu, is regularly updated every time you move to a new place in the US. This should be done within 10 days of moving. There also might be additional update requirements that ISS needs, so pay attention to communication, particularly emails that you receive from the ISS office. Keeping your passport valid is an essential part of maintaining F1 or J1 status. If your passport will expire while in the US, you need to contact your local embassy at least 6 months prior to the expiration to start the renewal process. This is what an I-20 and a DS 2019 look like. The red circle demonstrates where you will find your program dates. Familiarize yourself with your certificate of eligibility so that you know what information is listed there. Your I-20 or DS 2019 certificate of eligibility has an expiration date that is issued depending on your degree level. Sometimes students complete their program sooner or later than the amount of time given on your I-20 or DS 2019. That's okay, as long as you inform ISS about what's going on. If you need additional time past the program end date listed on your certificate of eligibility, you must apply for a program extension with the ISS office. More to come on this later, and we also have additional information on our website. Moving on to international travel. The documents listed here are important so that you can re-enter the US. You should have your passport with at least 6 months of validity, a valid F1 or J1 visa, and your I-20 or DS 2019 signed within the last 12 months. If you need an updated signature, you can either drop off your I-20 or DS 2019 to the ISS office front desk, or you can request a new travel signature online. For more information and suggestions on additional supplementary documents that might be helpful when re-entering the US, see the travel section of the ISS website. Next, let's move on to enrollment requirements. Undergraduate students seeking an associate, bachelor's, pathway, or non-degree exchange program of study must enroll in a minimum of 12 credit hours. Graduate students seeking a master's, doctoral, or certificate degree must enroll in at least 9 credit hours unless they have a graduate assistantship. Graduate assistants must enroll in at least 6 credit hours. Only one fully online course counts towards your full-time enrollment. If you take more than one online course, a course that is fully online, that is, this means that you must enroll in more than the minimum amount of credits because only one fully online course counts. Hybrid classes are considered in person as long as they do have a face-to-face component. In some instances, you might have a valid reason for enrolling less than full-time. According to immigration regulations, the following reasons are acceptable for taking a reduced course load. Common reasons include if you are a graduate student who has completed all coursework and are only enrolling for thesis or dissertation credit, you qualify for a reduced course load. Another common reason is if you are in your final semester of study and have completed almost all of your classes. You also do not have to enroll in a full course load, although you do have to still have in-person class requirements. Less common reasons include an illness or injury, having difficulties with the English language reading requirements or American teaching methods during your first semester of study, or if you're improperly placed in a course. If you do need an exception to full-time enrollment for one of these reasons, don't hesitate to consult the ISS website or reach out to us for more information on how to apply. You must apply for an exception to full-time enrollment before the semester in question begins. The University of South Carolina has 2 major school breaks, summer and winter breaks. However, the university does continue to offer classes in the summer. International students are not required to enroll in the summer unless it is the first or the last semester of study. But you are welcome to enroll in the summer if you want to. There are no classes held during winter break. As we discussed a few slides earlier, you will need to be approved for an I-20 or DS 2019 extension if you will graduate later than the program end date listed on your certificate of eligibility. If you fail to extend your I-20 or DS 2019 certificate of eligibility before the program end date and you do not graduate, you might be required to depart the US before you complete your studies. You should begin the process of extending your program during the semester in which your I-20 or DS 2019 expires. For instance, if your certificate of eligibility expires in May of 2025, then you should apply for a program extension during the spring 2025 semester, only if you will not graduate during May of 2025. Note that this is only for students who do not complete their program by the end date listed on the I-20 or DS 2019 certificate of eligibility. You might not need to apply for a program extension during your time as a student. The important thing to take away from this slide is that you should be aware of the program end date listed and take steps to address it if the date is not in line with your graduation date. Once you have completed your program, you are now a University of South Carolina graduate. You are then in your grace period, which is 60 days for F1 students and 30 days for J1 students. During this time, you can transfer to a new program, apply for optional practical training if you are an F1 student, or stay in the US and make preparations to leave. If your immigration record is terminated for a reason other than program completion, such as a leave of absence or suspension, this grace period does not apply. Let's move on to discuss the basics of employment as an F1 or J1 student in the US. This information is very basic and is meant to familiarize you with one major thing. Do not work, especially off campus, if you are not authorized to do so. This can be a very serious violation of your status. Generally speaking, F1 and J1 students can work on campus for up to 20 hours per week during the school year and up to 40 hours per week during summer and winter break. Off-campus employment is more complicated. F1 students may qualify for curricular practical training, CPT, or optional practical training, OPT, after one academic year of enrollment, and J1 students may qualify for academic training. If you are interested in working off campus, take a look at the employment section of the ISS website or chat with an ISS advisor to learn more. Filing your taxes in the US is normal and required for all individuals, including international students. You will need to file taxes with the US Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, in January through April of any given year, and the taxes are being filed for the previous calendar year. So for instance, you file your taxes for the year 2021 in January through April of 2022. This is true for students who did work or did not work. It doesn't matter. Whether or not you have a job, doesn't matter. You still have to pay or at least file your taxes. This process is sometimes straightforward and sometimes confusing, but the ISS office typically provides international students with access to a tax filing service meant specifically for international students. Keep an eye out for information on filing your taxes at the beginning of each calendar year, typically around February. To wrap up this presentation, let's discuss how ISS can serve you during your time at the University of South Carolina. We are here to empower you with knowledge and skills so that you can remain compliant with your visa requirements. We are your partner in this, but we cannot do it for you. You are ultimately responsible for ensuring that your immigration status is maintained, and ISS is here to support you in this goal. Secondly, ISS will advocate for you and support your adjustment to living in the US. We want to support you. We want to connect you with on-campus and off-campus resources and community. Third, ISS maintains the university's holistic immigration compliance requirements for students and for the institution so that we can continue to be approved for international student enrollment by the Department of Homeland Security. And finally, we hope to inspire University of South Carolina students to forge international connections through internationalization opportunities. We are here for you and would love to meet you. If you need to contact ISS, you can chat with us online, call our front desk, send us an email to our general email account, make an appointment to visit us, or connect with us via social media or through our weekly email newsletter. We will communicate with you primarily through email, so make sure that you read any email you receive from ISS or an ISS advisor. International Student Services is honored to welcome you to the University of South Carolina. We look forward to getting to know you during your time at the university. See you soon, and go Gamecocks.